Alright, now we're going to print a multiple color job on this 4-color one-station tabletop press. We're also going to be using the 16 by 16 1800 watt adjustable height flash carry unit to cure the shirts once they've been printed. The print that we're going to be doing today is this 2-color Ryonet Corporation ISS Texas Longhorns print. Now if you notice, these transparencies are rather old. That's because this print's 3 or 4 months old. You're always going to want to keep around your transparencies even though your screens are already burned, because you always might have the risk of popping a screen or ruining a screen. You always want to have your transparencies handy to set up your jobs. So you always want to file and categorize your old transparencies for future prints. As we're setting this job up, we want to come over and turn the flash dryer in the on position. We want to give the flash dryer about 15 to 20 minutes to heat up, so when we start curing the shirts, it's completely hot and ready to go. If you turn it on right as you start curing the shirts, it's going to warm up as you're curing, and it's going to change your curing parameters. We want to make sure it's hot before we start printing. Now, let's come over here and start lining this job up. Now, if you notice, we already have a neckline on this palette and we have a center line. So we can pretty much start lining the job up without having to put a t-shirt on the palette. Okay, it's going to be 4 fingers down. Once again, this is a center print on the front of a shirt. So 4 fingers down, about 3 or 4 inches down the center of the shirt. Going to come here and then place it approximately where we want it to go on the palette. Then, if you notice, even though this is a 2-color job, we're only going to be setting the job up to 1 film, because the film has registration marks in it. That's why we're showing you how to create those registration marks in the artwork program. So since each screen exposed those registration marks, we can set up and align each screen to those registration marks, and they're going to align correspondingly to that film and being registered when you start printing the job. Since this is a smaller film and it's a fairly square palette, we can, instead of having to get on here and measure it off and making sure everything's square, we can pretty much eye this print up to make sure it's square. I'm just eyeing it there to there, making sure it's about even distance. We can center it. You always do want to make sure that it's square to the palette so you don't have a crooked print. So we can come and do that with our square here, making sure that the print's completely square. Once it is, you want to just take a piece of tape, piece of Scotch tape, and then tape it down to the palette. Once everything's set up, I'm going to move it over here just to make sure it's centered. I'm going to square it one more time. You can never be too safe, because it's horrible when you get starting to print and, oh no, your shirts aren't squared. So once our print's square, centered on the palette, we can come and line the screens up to it. Alright, let's bring over our first screen and start registering our job. We'll put the screen into the screen clamp. We don't want to tighten it at all though. And put the arm down in the printing position. Now, since this is a multiple color job, we really want to make sure that these registration marks line up exactly to the film and to the screen. By doing that, we want to make sure that we get over the screen so we see down. If you're looking at it at an angle, it might look like it's lined up, but unless you're looking at it straight down, you're not going to get an accurate representation. You're also going to want to push the screen down, to make sure that it's lined up, because you have some off contact in there. You want to push the screen down to make sure that it's lined up with the film. So you want to adjust the screen. You don't want to tighten the clamps down yet, because you have to register your job. So you want to make sure that all 3 registration marks are in perfect register with each other, so that you can't see any parts of the white platen underneath them. Only you see the black film underneath it. So once those 3 are down, you want to put your hand, put some pressure on the screen, so while you're tightening the clamps up, it's not going to move. So then you want to start slowly and then tighten down on the clamps. Make sure the screen doesn't move throughout this process. Okay, once the screen's clamped down, we want to push one more time to double check and make sure all the registration marks are lined up. Okay, now we're going to come grab our second color and second screen and get that to register. Putting it in the screen clamp. We're not going to tighten it down yet though. Then we're going to put the clamp into the printing position. Get it all into position there. Now we're going to come line the job up to the registration marks. Once again, you want to be directly over it. You only want to see black film underneath the registration marks. You want to see no parts of white. You want to press down on it too. Make small adjustments as needed, large adjustments. This is why you want to have your screens burned in the same spot. You want to put your film in the same screen so that when you come to register your job, you're not going to have troubles registering it, especially if your press doesn't have micro registration. So once it's registered, I'm going to tighten it down. And I'm going to double check one more time to make sure that it's registered, and it is. So now that our job is registered, let's take our film off. Then we're going to tape up the screens and start printing. Okay, now that our screens are taped off, we're going to do a test print to test for pinholes in our design. So we're going to come to our palette and spray adhesive on it. We're going to grab a white test square because this print is going to be a black and a red design on white shirts. So we're going to put a test print down. This part of the design is going to be black. The text is going to be red. Normally we start from light to dark when we're in the printing process. So we start printing light colors first and do the dark colors last. So we're going to come and apply ink to the first screen. That's the red ink. You want to get a fairly good amount of ink below the image. Once the ink's on the screen, we want to place the squeegee behind it. Once again, using the proper squeegee width for that design. Now let's come and put our black ink down on the screen. Just again, getting enough ink on the screen. And then placing the squeegee behind it. So we're going to print going light to dark. We're going to print our red color first. Work up the ink on the squeegee like that. And then remember the squeegee angle, about 80 degrees, pressing down on the print. We'll flood the print once, bring the ink back, and then do our first test print. Once again, the squeegee angle pressing down to clear the ink. If you're leaving ink on the screen like that, that's not a good print. You want to make sure that you clear the ink like so. And we're going to bring the screen up. We're going to back flood the screen. Get the ink back to pre-flood the screen. There's our first test print. We look good. We have no pin marks. A pin mark would be like a little red dot right there or a red dot right here. Now if you notice, we're leaving the registration marks untaped off. Those aren't going to be on our final print. But while we're setting the job up, we're going to leave them untaped off in case we need to re-register the job at all. Come down and put the black print on. Now before we print, I'm going to make clear that we don't have to flash cure this design. None of the colors are touching. If the colors were touching, we'd have to flash cure the design, or if we were printing ink on top of ink like we did on the last print, we'd have to flash cure between the two colors. But since the two colors are not touching, we do not have to flash cure the design. Only when the colors are touching do you have to flash cure. Build some ink up on the squeegee, get it worked around. Do a flood, make sure all the ink is taken care of, and then do one print, make sure everything's good. We're actually needing to come back one more time. I'm going to back flood the screen here, and then do a print. Remember the good angle so you clear all the ink off the screen. Now to back flood the screen, I've never really talked about this before. You're going to pull your squeegee from this side of the ink to this side, the outside of the ink, and then push down and then move the screen back. You have to put a pretty good amount of pressure onto the squeegee so you get a good back flood against the screen.